Hello, and welcome to using plaster cloth. For those of you who aren't familiar with plaster, plaster is a powder made from gypsum, and just like concrete, plaster goes through a chemical reaction and hardens when it is mixed with water. It is easy to manipulate into different forms and pour into different molds before the chemical reaction takes place, and then once it's set, it can be carved and sculpted. As you can imagine, it has a lot of uses in the art world, one of which is bringing 3D elements into 2D work. In this case, the plaster is embedded into a gauze. As you can see, it's a long, thin strip of gauze, very much like the stuff that doctors use when they're putting the person's arm in a cast, which is usually made from plaster. And we're going to just cut off a strip and dip it really quickly in water, and it becomes soft and pliable, and you can kind of mold it and manipulate it into different shapes or forms. As you can see, the more you manipulate it, the squishier it gets. I'm in the process now of making a heart just because it's easily recognizable. Please excuse me going off the frame. I forget myself sometimes. And after the heart, I'm just going to make like a little nubbin. You can pretty much use plaster in any way you feel comfortable using it to give yourself some texture in your final product. This is where I take a little bit of cloth and just make a little nubbin. It can become anything you want it to become. Puffballs, whatever, whatnot. Just, something to give your pieces some texture and something interesting. Once you're done making whatever it is you're going to make to add to your painting, you just set them aside and wait for the chemical reaction to happen and let them set. Make sure you always rinse off your hands. Now, another thing that can be done is that you can use plaster cloth to mold different things. In particular, it is perfect for molding body parts. In the art classroom, that's usually going to be your hand or your face. So what you want to do in order to mold, let's say your hand, which is what the example is going to be, is you want to give yourself a lot of small pieces cut into different shapes. So you just want to give yourself triangles, rectangles, strips, just small, odd shaped pieces, and you'll see why in a minute. The first thing you want to do is decide what position you are going to put your hand in, or your face, or your foot even. Just decide on a position. Have an end in mind. What are you going to use it for? Once you've figured out your position, you absolutely must, under every single circumstance, apply Vaseline to your hand. Do not use plaster cloth on your skin without applying Vaseline to it. You have to give yourself a nice healthy coat of Vaseline anywhere you plan on applying the plaster cloth, and then some, so that you cover any area that you might accidentally get. The reason we do this is because the plaster cloth, if there isn't a layer of protection there, it will adhere to the hair on your body, and in some cases really dry skin, and when you go to remove it, your skin and the hair comes off with it. So make sure you give yourself a really good coat of Vaseline, please. Once you have a good layer of Vaseline on, you can start applying the plaster cloth. All you have to do is dip it in water, place it on whatever you're molding, and just kind of start smoothing it over that surface, making sure that you don't go past the Vaseline. Just continue adding and smoothing, adding and smoothing. You'll notice that the plaster breaks up a little and kind of becomes like this creamy consistency. That is a good thing. You want to smooth that over the plaster cloth so that you get rid of the plaster cloth texture. If your plaster starts getting a little dry, just go ahead and dip your hand in the water a little bit just to kind of moisten it enough so that you can continue smoothing it. You don't want it to get too wet, but at the same time, you want to be able to control the consistency so that it remains smooth long enough for you to finish molding your hand. So as you can see, I am really quickly smoothing this onto my hand. But really what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that the plaster is spread out nicely and evenly. Once you're done with the smoothing, it's just a matter of time and waiting for it to set. You're going to feel that it gets a little warm. That's how you know that it pretty much set. And as you can see, the heart and the little nubbin set probably a while ago. Once you feel that it's hardened into a shell around your hand, it's rather easy to get it out. You just start by wiggling your fingers and loosening it up, and then you just pull it right off, and as you can see, it easily comes out because it wasn't encased or enclosed. It mimics the shape that I wanted it to have, and it's a shell. It's just an empty shell that we can attach to our canvas. wherever we want and make it part of our two-dimensional work, giving a three-dimensional element. Always wash in whatever water you're using. This water does not go down the sink. We throw it out in different ways, but we never pour anything having to do with plaster down the sink. And here it is, the finished product. A hand, or the finger and a thumb, a little nubbin, and a heart, ready to be attached to the painting however we want. Plaster cloth.